All right, GAC, back at you. Algebra 3, this is section 4.5b. Notice that I'm only going to do one example. The example I'm going to do is example 1 because most of it can be found on 4.5a if you missed it or if you need to look at that a little bit further. So again, 4.5a, practice 4.5a, can be looked at for that podcast to help you with 4.5b. All right, here we go. First of all, if we know in example 1, in this example, notice that everything looks the same except one little thing, the COS, cosine. First of all, we know that in sine, and when we did it, looked almost as if it just continued forward. Well, there's no difference from sine to cosine except one little thing. The difference is at 0, 0, the middle on a traditional y equals sine x, the middle always crosses, almost like the inflection point, always crosses at 0, 0. In this next example, the maximum, or the highest point, one of the maximum, relative maximum, crosses at 0, 0 in this case. So instead, what will happen is instead of it crossing here, the graph will start here and go down to this area. Okay, notice that it's almost as if the sign has shifted over a little bit, except it's a traditional y equals cosine of x. And that's what that looks like. Now in this example, we're going to just say that in this example that we have pi over 2 here, and we have over here is pi, and we could keep going forward. All right, over here is negative pi over 2. This is negative pi, and we keep going to the left as well. And for sake of argument, what we're going to do, we're going to have 1 on top, negative 1 on bottom, and then we got negative 2, and we have positive 2 right here as well. Now, again, in my traditional one, I'm going to graph that as if it's purple, except this time, I'm sorry, this 2 should be up a little bit. Just put that there. Let's put 2 right up there as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first one, our A. Notice how A is 2. Well, just like we did in sine, the A represents our altitude, or how far it goes up and down. The higher the number, the skinnier it will get. So in this example, it's not going to start at 1 going down. In this example, we're going to start at 2 and negative 2. So over here, it should end up going like this. And notice that, again, the same thing is true. 2 pi will end up being our period for the traditional one. So what we'll do is we'll have something that looks like this. It'll go down. And then it's going to go up like this. Okay, notice that it's not crossing at, let me see if I can redo that there. Notice that it is not crossing at pi. Instead, this time, it is going to end up being almost like a curve. The bottom point right here is what we're looking at. Notice on the same side, it's going through negative pi over 2, and then once it gets to negative 2, it will end up having a curve right here. So again, if I kept going, the graph should look like this right here. Okay, and as it goes up 2 and down 2. Notice also that as I go, the period still is from negative pi to pi. Where does it make a full rotation? Well, it makes a full rotation at 2 pi total. Okay, 2 pi total. So again, that we just did A because we know the altitude is 2. So we know it goes up 2 and down 2. Now we've got to look to our second part. Remember, our second part is our B. That represents our period. Or how many times does it make a full rotation? Again, in a traditional sine and cosine, that answer is 2 pi. But because this has a 2 in front of the x, we know B is 2. So to find what our period is, we're going to take 2 pi, divide it by 2 to give us a total rotation, what it will take to take a full rotation as pi. So it's almost as if it's doing it 2 times for every time it did the traditional one once. So every time I do a full rotation, it will take pi. So from 0 to pi, I need to get a full rotation within that amount. So what I'm saying is it should look like the following. Okay. So as I do this, I'm going up, starting right here. Sorry, right here. Boom. It's going down, up, down, and up. So again, as I do this, notice that from 0 to pi, I made a full rotation. I went down, and then I went back up. Down and went back up. And again, I did that from 0 to pi. Therefore, my full rotation, or my period, will end up being pi. So as I go, I keep going again. Kind of come in between here. And then I keep going forward. Now, the orange one is still not the answer. You might say, well, why? Why not? Well, because remember the 2x and pi, we've got to look at now for our phase shift, the PS. So we know that in order to do this, we've got to do C over B. Well, our C in this example will end up being pi, and our B would end up being 2. Therefore, we know that my phase shift is going to go pi over 2, or right pi over 2. So no longer would I start at this point. We've got to push this over pi over 2. So now I'm going to start it over here. So again, the same thing is occurring as the orange one, except now it's going to be over pi over 2. So I've got to do my period from pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2, which is about in that area. So it should look like this. Boom and boom. Okay? Again, coming over here, right here, right here. Should go up to 2, should be right up here, and down, and all around. So again, I know it looks really, really confusing, but if I were to make this a little bit larger, this may help out a little bit. Our graph should look something like this right here. Now I know that was probably a little too much. Little too much there, but you get the idea. We know that in looking at this, okay, big thing, A is our altitude, okay? We know that that is how high or how low it's going. In this case, it's 2, okay? Trying to get a happy medium here. All right, we also know that our B is referring to that 2x. We know the 2x always refers to what is our period. We do 2 pi over B, therefore we get pi, therefore one full rotation takes pi to get to. And then finally our phase shift is C over B, or in this case pi over 2. Hope that helped out a little bit. Note that if you have any questions, please come and talk with me on that. But remember, altitude, phase shift, and then finally we have our period. All three of those things come together to give us what our answer is. All right? And I keep saying altitude, I mean amplitude. One thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out to y'all. So if you're thinking, Coach, you said altitude, that's not right. You're right, it's amplitude. But we're talking, I always think of altitude because I always think of how high or how low it goes based upon what the A is. I hope you have a fantastic day. If you have questions, you can come tomorrow. Other than that, see you later, folks. Bye.